delighted to say that talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, is joining us live from Goodwood Races as well. And let me tell you, Darren, yesterday I was with Crookie at Goodwood and on Thursday as well. We've had some brilliant days, had a lot of winners. Yesterday he said, do you know what, mate, I've got a nap of the day for you here. It's an absolute banker, definitely going to come in. It's in the lucky last. It's called Midnight Rumble. Put your money on it.
Where'd it come?
Yeah. Non-runner. Didn't even start. Cheers for that, Crookie. Don't worry though, I did actually back the winner in that race. So
nice. Did you tell anyone?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, just told the nation. Alex Crook, did you back a winner in that race?
A non-runner isn't a loser, first and foremost. I didn't back the winner in that race, but I just have had a 9-2 winner in the first today, so I'm still bubbling along nicely.
So hold on.
Thanks for the tip, mate.
Crookie gave you his tip, but you didn't give Crookie your tip. No. Oh, okay.
That sounds right.
Going.
When's Crook ever done anything I've ever told him to do? I tell you what, absolutely never. Crookie, of course, whilst you're enjoying your time down at Goodwood as well, the transfer window is bubbling away, and there's a big old story about Conor Gallagher as well being banished from the first team training at Chelsea. What can you tell us about that situation?
Well, I think we can officially say this is the first saga of the transfer window. It's been no secret that Chelsea have been open to offers for Conor Gallagher for some time now. They've been trying to actively move him on in the last 2 or 3 transfer windows, despite the fact he started 37 of 38 Premier League games last season. He was often made captain under Mauricio Pochettino, but their stance hasn't changed really. Yes, they've offered him a contract, but only 2 years. He feels as a regular first team player and someone who wears the armband that maybe that's a little bit disrespectful when you look at the fact that Moises Caicedo signed an 8-year contract. Romeo Lavia, another midfielder, came in from Southampton last summer and was given a 7-year deal. So I do sympathise with Conor Gallagher. We broke the story on talkSPORT earlier last week that they'd accepted a bid from Atletico Madrid, a package worth around £33 million. So it's basically up to Gallagher to agree personal terms. I know there was a summit meeting between Gallagher and members of the Chelsea hierarchy at their Cobham training ground yesterday. And as you say, Ollie, it's my understanding that he's been told he'll no longer be part of the first team. He won't be training with the rest of Enzo Maresca's senior players when they return from America next week. So I think you have to say this is Chelsea trying to force Conor Gallagher's hand. Will it work? I'm not entirely convinced. I'm not sure that he's desperate to bow to their demands. His contract, as it stands, comes to an end at the end of next season. So I think somewhere down the line a compromise is going to have to be reached.
Darren, what do you make of this situation? Because as Crookie's just said there, it sounds like Conor Gallagher is actually keen to stay at Chelsea. He's just looking at the contract length and going, do you know what, I think I've earned a bit more than this, but now they've said, no, do you know what, you can't train with us and actually we want you out the door.
Yeah, I think he's been treated disgustingly, in all honesty. I think if you look at last season, along with, I'd say, Trevor Chalobah, who also has been treated disgustingly, probably 2 of the shining lights, along with Cole Palmer, I think. And Crookie's right, the players that have come in, Mudryk as well, that's been offered these massive contracts, Broja and Trevor Chalobah, only recently signed 6-year contract extensions or new contracts, and he's arguably one of their better players. He's wore the armband in the absence of Reece James. I just think it's showing that this is an out-and-out business for Chelsea. It's nothing to do with it. We know why they're selling or want to sell those two, for the pure profit that they gain having come through the academy. I think it's disgusting the way he's been treated.
Chelsea fans, give us a call on that as well. 03717 223344. Do you agree there with Darren that this is a disgusting situation really for Conor Gallagher? It sounds like he is being forced out at Stamford Bridge. Crookie, elsewhere, looks like West Ham are going to get a striker over the line, and a good one as well. Nicholas Füllkrug is the man linked. How close is that one?
Yeah, I think very close now. Borussia Dortmund released a statement through their social media channels this morning confirming that Füllkrug has been given permission to travel to West Ham, undergo medical and discuss personal terms. A fee of £27 million to include add-ons has been agreed. He wasn't their first choice. They were really keen to sign John Duran from Aston Villa, but they couldn't come up with an agreement there. Whether they revisit that now, I'm not sure. But in terms of Füllkrug, I think you're right. A player who played a massive part in Borussia Dortmund getting to the final of the Champions League, scored some big goals for them, did really well, I thought, when he came off the bench for Germany at the Euros. I guess the only thing you would say is that he's not at the early stage of his career. He's arguably at the veteran stage of his career, and the Premier League is a whole new ball game. But certainly the owners are doing their best to back Julian Lopetegui. They've already spent £40 million on Max Kilman. They're still trying to get a deal done for Aaron Wan-Bissaka as well. So West Ham could be one of those sides maybe who are quietly going under the radar and could have a good season next year.
You know what, Crookie, I was going to ask you that. How close is that deal with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and also Crescencio Somerville that he's been linked as well? I mean, West Ham are really making some moves.
Yeah, that's going to happen. He's undergone his medical already, a fee agreed with Leeds after they lowered their demands, which at one stage this summer were as high as £40 million. Last time I checked in on the Wan-Bissaka situation, the clubs were still a little way apart in terms of valuation, but I think there's a willingness on both sides to get that deal done. As a United fan, I'm a little bit sad to see Wan-Bissaka leave the football club. I think in terms of a modern fullback, maybe he could be better going forward, but if you're looking at a defender, which first and foremost is what you want your fullbacks to be, when you're up against superior opposition, as we've seen against the likes of Manchester City, I think Wan-Bissaka one-on-one is just about as good a defender as there is in the Premier League.
Yeah. Crookie, as you've mentioned Manchester United there as well, two names being linked as incomings as well, Noussair Mazraoui and also Matthias de Ligt as well. What's the latest with those ones?
Well, the interest in de Ligt has been there all summer. I think he's keen to move to Manchester United and link up again with Erik ten Hag and really try and get his career at the top level back on track. At the moment, the clubs haven't agreed a fee, so I'd expect that one to rumble on a bit longer. But United's need is a bit more desperate now with that news, horrible news really, that Lenny Yoro, the 18-year-old, £50-odd million signing, is going to miss the first few months, not just weeks of the season, with what we believe is a metatarsal injury. And in terms of Mazraoui, I think that one is developing rapidly, and that would be directly linked to Wan-Bissaka joining West Ham.
Crookie, just quickly, with your Manchester United fan hat on here, Ineos have come in and they've promised this new look Manchester United, and they brought in Wilcox and Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada and said that the whole strategy is going to change, and one of the big criticisms was that Erik ten Hag was signing his former players, and yet the big name linked this summer, or one of the big names linked this summer, is Matthias de Ligt. How do you view that as a fan?
Well, I don't think it's solely being led by Ten Hag. Obviously, there's an obvious connection to make, and Joshua Zirkzee is another Dutch player that is coming in, but I understand he was a club target as opposed to a Ten Hag target, and the same with Lenny Yoro. I think you need to get a fine balance. I'm not necessarily in favour of a situation where the sporting director or the transfer committee signs all the players for the managers. I think the managers need to be on board as well, but equally I do think Erik ten Hag, probably for reasons beyond his control, because basically the people above him weren't fit for purpose, did get too much autonomy when it came to signings last summer.
Crookie, let's talk about Mark Gay here. Obviously, Olly Clink is desperately keen to know what the latest is there. I mean, this could end up being one of the biggest transfers of this window. Do you see this going ahead? 70 million, I'm hearing.
It's big money. I was told they wanted well north of £60 million right at the start of the summer, actually, when there was talk about Elise and Ezer, that the player that Palace expected the most interest in was Mark Gahey, and that was even before he excelled for England at the Euros. Newcastle very keen to get this deal done. I'm told that Gahey is keen to make the move to St James's Park and join what he sees as an upwardly mobile, ambitious club. But I just wonder, now this is out in the open, I think it did come from the Palace end when it was first reported. I wonder if we might see a bit of a bidding war where some bigger clubs get involved as well.
Come on, Mark, you know where to sign. You know where to sign.
You're going for Chelsea's back four, aren't you? Livramento, Lewis Hall, Gahey.
But actually, Crookie, if it doesn't work out with Mark Gahey, there's been a story this week about Joe Gomez being linked with Newcastle. Now, this was all a bit strange. This was back when it was before the PSR deadline. Newcastle desperately had to raise £60 million. So there was talk, actually, of Anthony Gordon going off to Liverpool for I think about 75 million, and then Joe Gomez going the other way for 45 million. Just on Gomez, if Mark Gahey, if that move doesn't work out, can you see Newcastle going back in for Joe Gomez?
I can. My understanding is that he remains a target, a player that Eddie Howe is very keen on. I'm not sure that Eddie Howe would have been particularly keen on the Anthony Gordon part of that swap deal, but that was a lot closer, I think, than many people realise. Anthony Gordon, a big Liverpool fan. I know that Newcastle are now working to try and get him committed to a long-term contract, knowing that Liverpool interest is lurking away. But I can see the attraction with Joe Gomez, who again was part of the England squad over in Germany, because not only can he do a job at centre-half, he brings that versatility that Eddie Howe likes from his defenders as well. So if the Gahey deal doesn't go through or proves too expensive, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they did revisit this one.
Just quickly, Crookie, I don't know if you know about Federico Chiesa, of course. So last night I was on the sports bar, we was talking about him coming to Spurs, and it seems Spurs have pulled out of that running, and Manchester United are maybe looking along with Chelsea.
Yeah, I'm not convinced Spurs were ever in that race, to be honest, and nor the other two teams you mentioned. I think his agent's been quite busy this summer. This was a player who had a real impact when Italy won the Euros 3 years ago. Didn't have anywhere near the same impact in the most recent tournament. He's coming back from a long injury, demand big money. I'm not as convinced he's as close to a move to the Premier League as maybe his camp would want you to believe.
And Crookie, just finally on Arsenal, who've already been busy in this transfer window. They've got Calafiori over the line. Mikel Merino, the former Newcastle midfielder, is the man being linked from Real Sociedad. How far along is that?
It seems like this one will happen. A player that Mikel Arteta is a big fan of, as you say, someone with Premier League experience, but maybe someone who didn't necessarily fulfil his full potential when he was at Newcastle. I know you didn't mind him as a player, Ollie, as a Newcastle fan. He's going to be high in confidence, having been part of that Spain team that won the Euros, and yes, another Spaniard arriving at Arsenal to go and play for Mikel Arteta. They've also been linked in one newspaper this morning with Julian Alvarez at Manchester City, who does seem to be hankering for a move away, but I think that would be quite an expensive deal. And I do wonder now, with how much progress Arsenal have made, if Manchester City will be that willing to sell one of their better players to a direct rival.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.